He's one of the most famous drummers in rock history, a man whose thunderous beats defined the sound of Genesis and reshaped pop music in the 80s. Phil Collins, a legend behind the kit, a powerhouse on the mic, and a perfectionist who demanded excellence from everyone around him. But behind that charming grin and polished professionalism was a man who had strong opinions, and some of them weren't so friendly. Sources close to Collins claim he had deep resentment, rivalries, and even outright hatred towards certain drummers, artists he believed were overhyped, arrogant, or simply disrespectful to the craft he dedicated his life to. Today on Legend Uncovered, we're revealing the 6 drummers Phil Collins allegedly couldn't stand. Some of these rivalries turned into lifelong grudges. Others began with respect and ended in betrayal. So grab your sticks. This one's going to hit hard. Number 6. Don Henley. At number 6, we have Don Henley, the voice and drummer of the Eagles. Two legends of the same generation, both drummers who stepped out from behind the kit to take the spotlight as singers. But according to insiders, Phil Collins didn't exactly admire Henley's style. Sources claim Phil once called Don a good singer who forgot what a drummer was supposed to sound like. He allegedly mocked Don's drumming as stiff and soulless, saying it lacked the groove and fire true drummers live for. It didn't help that the Eagles' success overshadowed Genesis in the mid-70s. Insiders say Phil felt Henley got too much credit as a drummer, when in Phil's words, he only played the easy stuff. During the late 80s awards show, both men were seated near each other, and witnesses recall the tension. Phil reportedly refused to engage in small talk and later joked to friends, "Don's great at singing heartbreak songs, he just can't play them." The rivalry never turned public, but industry veterans say Phil made sure people knew. He didn't think Don Henley was in his league.
Number 5. Lars Ulrich. At number 5, Lars Ulrich of Metallica. On paper, the two had little in common. One was a progressive rock genius, the other a heavy metal icon. But behind the scenes, Phil Collins reportedly couldn't stand Lars's drumming. Sources claim Phil found Lars's style mechanical and noisy, lacking the precision and emotional feel that define great drumming. One music producer even recalled Phil laughing during a Metallica playback session, saying, "That guy hits like he's mad at the drums, not in love with them." Insiders say what really irritated Phil was Lars's attitude. He allegedly saw him as arrogant, more focused on fame and theatrics than musicality. When asked in an interview about the modern drummers he admired, Phil allegedly skipped over Lars entirely, calling today's metal drumming too loud, too fast, and not musical enough. Fans noticed, and so did Lars. The two never collaborated, and according to some sources, Lars once called Phil the pop drummer your dad listens to. To which Phil reportedly replied, "At least dads still have taste."
Number 4. Ringo Starr. At number 4, this one shocked everyone. Ringo Starr. Now, Phil Collins grew up idolizing the Beatles. He even appeared as an extra in A Hard Day's Night as a young teenager. But over time, admiration allegedly turned to irritation. Sources close to Phil say he was frustrated that Ringo, whom he considered a limited technical player, was constantly praised as one of the greatest drummers ever. Phil reportedly said, if Ringo wasn't a Beatle, no one would call him a drumming genius. Things got worse in the early 2000s when Phil sent Ringo an autographed book about the Beatles, only to receive it back unsigned. Phil was furious. He later said in an interview, "I got it back with the note saying, 'You're not worth it.' Maybe he thought I was being cheeky, but it hurt." After that, their friendship was done. Sources said Phil never forgave Ringo, calling him a legend because of circumstance, not skill. It became one of the most personal grudges in his career. Number 3, Dave Grohl. At number 3, Dave Grohl, the drummer turned frontman of Foo Fighters and former member of Nirvana. When Grohl's drumming style was hailed as the new sound of rock, insiders claimed Phil rolled his eyes. He reportedly said, "Bashing the kit like a caveman doesn't make you a great drummer." Sources claim Phil felt Grohl was celebrated more for his energy than his technique, and that media exaggerated his abilities. He allegedly told friends, "He's got passion, but not precision." Things became worse when Grohl made comments in the early 2000s about not being into overly polished dad rock. Phil reportedly took that as a direct shot at him. One insider said, "Phil thought Dave was disrespecting an entire generation of musicians." The two never worked together, and Phil supposedly refused to even appear on the same charity concert lineup. He felt Grohl represented everything wrong with modern drumming. Too loud, too simple, too celebrated. Number 2. Keith Moon. At number 2, Keith Moon of The Who. This one surprised fans, but insiders say Phil had a complicated relationship with Keith's legacy. He respected his energy, but hated his lack of control. Phil reportedly called Keith a brilliant madman who couldn't keep time to save his life. He allegedly told journalists, "Moon was great theater, but terrible rhythm." The contrast between their styles couldn't be sharper. Phil was all about precision, tone, and arrangement. Keith was chaos, emotion, and spectacle. Sources claim that whenever Keith was praised as the greatest drummer of all time, Phil would go silent, then mutter, "If that's great drumming, then I've wasted my life learning how to play properly." Despite his criticism, Phil once admitted privately that Keith had something he didn't: pure wildness. But admiration aside, the rivalry lived on in Phil's sharp words and quiet disapproval. Number 1. Peter Criss. And finally, number 1, Peter Criss of Kiss. According to multiple sources, Phil Collins despised Peter Criss more than any other drummer. He reportedly saw Criss as the ultimate symbol of style over substance, a guy who wore makeup, twirled sticks, and played basic 4/4 beats, yet called himself a rock god. Phil allegedly said, "If you hide behind fire and costumes, people forget how simple your playing really is." During the late 1970s, when Genesis and Kiss were both charting, insiders claim Phil mocked the band backstage at a European festival, saying, "Their drummer belongs in a circus, not a studio." The feud never went public, but studio engineers remember Phil refusing to mention Peter's name when asked about other drummers. He believed Peter's fame came from theatrics, not talent, and reportedly told friends that Kiss represented everything fake in rock music. To Phil, drumming was sacred, an art form of rhythm, dynamics, and emotional storytelling. To see it reduced to makeup and flash, that he could never forgive.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.